Owen Blake had grease under his fingernails and a headache that wouldn't quit. The cargo freighter's engine room smelled like burning metal and failure, which meant another 16-hour shift trying to keep the ancient systems from falling apart. Nobody chose to work on the distant horizon unless they were desperate or running from something. Owen was both. The explosion came without warning. One moment he was replacing a coolant line, and the next, the entire ship lurched sideways. Alarms screamed through the corridors. Red lights bathed everything in angry color. Owen grabbed a support beam as the artificial gravity flickered and nearly failed. "All crew to evacuation stations," Captain Haltros announced over the speakers. The Vrin's chittering voice stayed calm, but Owen heard the edge underneath. "Reactor core breach in 23 minutes. This is not a drill." Owen ran. The corridors filled with crew members pushing past each other. The Tavari scientist Dr. Scylla knocked into him, her green skin slick with fear sweat. Nobody apologized. Nobody looked back. This was how things worked in space when death came calling. You saved yourself first. The main life pod bay was chaos. Crew members fought for seats while Captain Haltros stood by the controls, his insect eyes reflecting the emergency lights. Owen joined the line, his heart hammering against his ribs. 16 pods, 42 crew members. The math was simple and ugly. "Valuable cargo only," Haltros announced. "Dr. Scylla, bring the breeding pair of Keltor cats. Leave the rest." Owen watched the scientist hurry toward the cargo hold with 2 crew members. They returned 5 minutes later carrying containment crates. Inside, small feline creatures yowled in fear. The crew loaded them onto a pod, strapped them down, and sealed the door. "What about the other animals?" someone asked. "No time," Haltros said, "and no profit in damaged goods." The words hit Owen like a punch. He thought of the cargo manifest he'd seen during loading. Dozens of creatures down in the hold. Rare specimens worth fortunes on the exotic pet markets, some of them intelligent enough to know they were being abandoned. 15 minutes, the ship's computer announced pleasantly, as if it wasn't counting down to their deaths. Owen made it into a pod. The seat was uncomfortable and smelled like the crew member who'd used it last. He strapped himself in and watched through the small window as the last few crew members squeezed into the remaining pods. The doors sealed with hydraulic hisses. Launch sequences began. Then he heard it. A sound that cut through the alarm noise and the engine rumble. A cry that sounded too much like a child in pain. Owen's hands moved before his brain caught up. He hit the emergency release on his harness and kicked open the pod door before it could launch. The crew member next to him shouted something, but Owen was already running back into the corridor. 12 minutes to core breach. The cargo hold was 3 levels down. Owen took the ladder wells 2 rungs at a time, his boots ringing against metal. The ship shuddered around him. Somewhere deep in its guts, the reactor was tearing itself apart atom by atom. The hold was dark except for emergency strips along the floor. Cages lined the walls, most of them empty now. The crew had taken anything worth money and left the rest. Owen followed the crying sound to the back corner. The cage was twice his height and reinforced with bars meant to hold something dangerous. Inside, curled on a metal floor, was a dragon. Owen had seen pictures of dragons before. Magnificent creatures that featured in human mythology, though real dragons were alien rather than magical. This one was small, barely larger than Owen himself. Its scales were deep red that shifted to gold at the edges. One wing stretched out normal and healthy. The other twisted at an unnatural angle, the membrane torn and infected. The dragon's eyes opened when Owen approached. They were intelligent eyes. Aware eyes. The kind of eyes that understood exactly what was happening. "They left you," Owen said quietly. The dragon made a sound low in its throat. Not quite speech, but communication. Agreement, maybe. Or accusation. Owen looked at the cage lock. Industrial grade. He pulled out his maintenance tool and started working. His hand shook but stayed steady enough. The lock clicked open after 30 seconds that felt like hours. 8 minutes to core breach. The dragon didn't move. It watched Owen with those terrible, knowing eyes. "I'm not leaving you here," Owen said. He stepped into the cage slowly, hands out and empty. The dragon could kill him easily even with one good wing. Those claws were as long as his fingers and sharp enough to cut through metal, but the dragon didn't attack. It struggled to its feet, favoring the damaged wing. Up close, Owen could see the infection spreading from the wound. Green pus leaked from torn flesh. The dragon had been suffering for days, maybe weeks, and nobody had cared enough to help. "Come on," Owen said. He put his shoulder under the dragon's good wing and took some of its weight. The creature was heavier than it looked, all muscle and bone under those scales. They moved together toward the door. The dragon limped badly, each step an obvious agony. Owen adjusted his grip and kept them moving. The ship groaned around them like a dying animal. 5 minutes to core breach. Owen's mind raced through options. The main life pods were gone. But he was a mechanic. He knew this ship better than anyone. The maintenance pods. Small craft meant for exterior repairs. Not designed for long trips, but they had life support and engines. They just had to reach the maintenance bay before the reactor turned them all into superheated gas. The maintenance bay was never designed for what Owen was about to do. He half-carried, half-dragged the injured dragon through the narrow access corridor, while the ship counted down their remaining life in clinical tones. 3 minutes, then 2. The dragon's breathing came in harsh gasps that sounded too human for comfort. The bay door stuck halfway open. Of course it did. Nothing on this rust bucket worked properly. Owen wedged himself into the gap and pushed with his legs. Metal scraped against metal. The dragon squeezed through after him, scales catching on rough edges. 90 seconds to core breach. The maintenance pod sat in its launch cradle like a gray coffin. Owen had worked on these pods 100 times. They were basic machines designed for simple jobs. Get outside the ship. Repair some hull plating. Come back inside. 4 hours of air. No food storage. No water recycling. Definitely no space for a full-grown dragon. He hit the pod's entry button and the hatch slid open. The interior was barely large enough for 2 humans to work comfortably. The dragon looked at the space, then at Owen, and made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "I know," Owen said. "But it's this or die." The dragon folded itself into the pod with surprising grace. Even injured, it moved like water flowing around obstacles. Owen climbed in after and sealed the hatch. The space was immediately claustrophobic. Dragon scales pressed against his back. Hot breath stirred his hair. His fingers flew across the control panel. Launch override. Emergency disconnect. Thruster activation. The pod wasn't meant for distance travel. It had chemical thrusters that could push it a few kilometers from the ship and back. That was all. But a few kilometers might be enough to survive the explosion. 30 seconds. Owen grabbed the control stick and fired the thrusters. The pod lurched free of its cradle and shot away from the distant horizon. Through the small viewport, Owen watched the ship shrink behind them. It looked peaceful from out here. Just another vessel drifting in the dark. Then it exploded. Light filled the viewport, bright enough to hurt even through the filters. The shockwave hit them a second later. The pod tumbled end over end. Owen's head cracked against something hard. The dragon wrapped its good wing around him instinctively, scales forming a shield against the impact. They spun through space like a thrown stone. Owen couldn't tell which way was up. His stomach rebelled. The dragon's claws dug into the pod's floor, the only thing keeping them both from being thrown around like dice in a cup. Finally, the spinning slowed. The pod's stabilization system kicked in with a wheeze and a prayer. They stopped tumbling and floated dead in space. Owen tasted blood. He'd bitten his tongue during the impact. The dragon made a questioning sound, and Owen realized its wing was still wrapped protectively around him. "I'm okay," he said. "Thanks." The dragon withdrew carefully. In the tight space, they were pressed together from shoulder to knee. Owen could feel the creature's heartbeat through its scales. Fast but steady. It was afraid but not panicking. That made one of them. He checked the pod's systems. Life support was functional. Thrusters were damaged but not destroyed. Communications array had snapped off during the explosion. The distress beacon still worked, broadcasting a weak signal into the void. 4 hours of air for 2 humans, except one of them was a dragon that probably breathed more than a human. Owen did the math in his head and didn't like the answer. 2 hours, maybe 3 if they stayed calm and breathed shallow. The dragon was watching him with those intelligent eyes. It could probably do math too. "We need to stretch the life support," Owen said. talking more to organize his thoughts than anything else. The dragon tilted its head, listening. Cut power to non-essential systems. Lower the temperature to reduce oxygen consumption. Slow our breathing. He started working. The pod systems were simple enough that he could rewire them without proper tools. He pulled panels off the walls and rerouted power. The lights dimmed to almost nothing. The temperature dropped immediately. Their breath started fogging the air. The dragon shifted to give him more room to work. It moved its injured wing with visible pain, but it understood what Owen was doing and tried to help. When Owen needed space to reach the air recycler, the dragon pressed itself against the far wall despite the agony it caused. "You understand me, don't you?" Owen asked while his hands worked. The dragon made a sound. Not quite a word, but affirmative, yes. "The cargo manifest said you were non-sentient animals, said dragons don't wake up until they're fully grown." Owen looked at the creature sharing this tiny space with him. "They lied," another sound. This one bitter and confirming. "They lied." Owen's hand stilled on the wiring. "How long have you been awake?" The dragon touched its damaged wing gently. Then it held up 3 claws. 3 weeks? 3 months? It didn't matter. Any amount of time was too long to suffer alone and aware. "I'm sorry," Owen said. The dragon made a soft trilling sound. It reached out carefully and touched Owen's shoulder with one claw. The gesture was clear. "Thank you." Owen finished the rewiring. According to his calculations, they now had 48 hours of life support. 48 hours for someone to find them in an empty region of space with a broken communications array and a distress beacon that could barely reach past a few thousand kilometers. He pulled out his personal tablet from his jacket pocket. The screen was cracked but functional. He had some food rations in the pod's emergency kit, some medical supplies meant for humans, and about 1,000 to 1 odds of survival. The dragon settled into the most comfortable position it could manage in the cramped space. Its injured wing leaked fluid onto the floor. The infection looked worse in the dim light. The flesh around the wound was swollen and dark. Owen opened the medical kit. "Human supplies, but better than nothing." He looked at the dragon. "This is going to hurt." The dragon met his eyes. It nodded once. To it, Owen began to clean the wound as carefully as he could. The dragon's muscles tensed under his hands, but it made no sound. Outside their tiny bubble of air and heat, space stretched on forever in all directions. Silent, empty, waiting. Day 3 in the pod, and Owen had stopped counting hours. Time lost meaning when every breath might be your second to last. The dragon's name was Rin. Owen had figured that out through a combination of pointing, gestures, and the creature's attempts at making specific sounds. Rin couldn't speak human languages, not with that throat structure, but understanding flowed both ways now. The cold had become a constant companion. Owen had reduced life support to minimum levels, and frost formed on the metal walls. They huddled together for warmth, human and dragon pressed so close that Owen could feel every breath Rin took. The creature's body heat helped, but not enough. Owen's fingers had gone numb yesterday and hadn't recovered. Rin's wing was getting better. Owen had cleaned the wound every day with their dwindling medical supplies, and dragon healing was apparently more efficient than human. The infection had retreated. The swelling had gone down. New tissue was growing over the tear, though the wing would never be properly shaped. Too much damage, too much time left untreated. "Tell me about your home," Owen said. His voice sounded strange in the confined space. They'd been mostly silent for days, conserving energy and oxygen, but the silence was starting to weigh heavier than words ever could. Rin made a series of sounds and gestures. Owen had learned to read them. Mountains, sky, others like him. A place where dragons flew together and built things with their claws and fire. A civilization that existed before humans learned to use tools. "Why did they take you?" Owen asked. Rin touched his damaged wing. The gesture said everything. Defective, worthless. In dragon society, maybe he'd been fine. Different, but fine. But to the traders, a dragon that couldn't fly properly was just inventory that wouldn't sell. Owen's tablet beeped. He'd been monitoring the distress beacon constantly, watching its power drain away. 3 more days of broadcast, maybe 4. Then silence. He'd also been scanning for any ships in range. Nothing so far. This region of space was a shortcut between major routes, which meant most traffic avoided it. "We're going to die out here," Owen said quietly. Not to Rin, really. Just speaking the truth out loud to see how it felt. Rin made a sound that meant no. Then the dragon did something unexpected. It reached out carefully and tapped Owen's tablet. Its claw pointed at the distress beacon controls. Owen looked at the screen, then at Rin. What? Rin gestured more urgently. It mimicked writing, then pointed at the beacon again. It took Owen a moment to understand. You want me to change the beacon message? Yes, Rin's whole body language screamed yes. Change it to what? It's already broadcasting standard distress codes. Rin made a frustrated sound. It pointed at itself, then at Owen, then at the beacon. Then it made a gesture that Owen had learned meant lies versus truth. Understanding hit Owen like cold water. The corporate ships. They'll just take you back. Even if they rescue us, you'll be cargo again. Rin nodded. But if we don't signal corporate ships, we might not get rescued at all. Another nod. Rin's eyes held steady. The dragon was willing to risk death for a chance at freedom. Owen realized he was looking at someone braver than most humans he'd known. Owen pulled up the beacon's programming. He wasn't a communications specialist, but he knew basic systems. The distress signal was simple. Location, vessel type, number of survivors. It broadcast on all frequencies, designed to attract any ship in range. I can modify it, Owen said slowly. Make it target independent vessels instead of corporate ones, but that cuts our potential rescuers by about 70%. Rin made a sound that meant good. We'll probably die. Rin reached out and put one claw gently on Owen's chest, right over his heart. The gesture was clear. We were going to die anyway. At least this way we die free, Owen laughed. It came out harsh and broken, but real. You know what? You're absolutely right. He started reprogramming the beacon. It took 2 hours of careful work. He changed the frequencies, modified the message, added specific codes that would be recognized by independent traders, but ignored by corporate vessels. It was risky. It was probably stupid. But Rin was right. They were already dying. Might as well die on their own terms. When he finished, the new signal pulsed out into the dark. A different message now. Not just distress, but defiance. Done, Owen said. Now we wait. Day 5 brought hallucinations. Owen saw his sister standing in the corner of the pod. She died 3 years ago, which was why he'd taken this terrible job in the first place, trying to pay off her medical debts, trying to make her death mean something. Now he was going to die too in a broken pod with a dragon nobody wanted. His sister smiled at him. You did good, she said. Owen closed his eyes. When he opened them, she was gone. Rin was watching him with concern. I'm fine. Owen lied. Rin made a sound that clearly meant you are not fine. Then the dragon did something that surprised Owen. It started to sing. Not human music, but something older. A melody that rose and fell like wind over mountains. Like fire burning in the dark. Like wings catching air for the first time. Owen listened and felt tears freeze on his cheeks. Rin was singing a death song. Owen was sure of it. The dragon knew they were running out of time. The life support systems were failing. The temperature had dropped to barely survivable levels. The oxygen tasted thin and stale, but the song wasn't sad. It was defiant. It said we lived. It said we mattered. It said we chose our own ending. Owen joined in, humming along to a melody he didn't know. Human and dragon singing together in the dark. Nobody to hear them but each other. Nobody to remember them but the void. The tablet beeped. Owen almost ignored it. Probably just another system failure. Another thing breaking down as they spiraled toward death. But Rin stopped singing and pushed the tablet toward him urgently. Owen looked at the screen and didn't believe what he saw. A ship, on sensors, approaching their position. His hands shook as he pulled up the details. The vessel's transponder identified it as the Silver Talon. Owen's heart sank as he read the registration. Corporate salvage ship. Same company that owned the distant horizon. No, Owen whispered. Rin saw the screen and made a sound of pure despair. They'd modified the beacon to avoid exactly this. But somehow a corporate ship had found them anyway. The comms crackled to life. Maintenance pod, this is Captain Haltros of the Silver Talon. We've detected your distress beacon. Prepare for recovery. Owen recognized that voice. The same captain who'd ordered them to leave the cargo behind. Who'd decided Rin was worthless? Who was now coming to collect whatever he could salvage? Rin looked at Owen with eyes that held no hope. The dragon had survived abandonment, injury, infection, and the cold dark of space. But it couldn't survive being cargo again. Owen looked at the controls. At the weak thrusters. at the debris field from the distant horizon that still drifted around them. "Hold on," he told Rin. "This isn't over yet." He fired the thrusters and sent them diving deeper into the debris field. If Haltros wanted them, he'd have to work for it. The maintenance pod wasn't built for evasive maneuvers. Owen pushed the damaged thrusters as hard as they'd go, weaving between chunks of the destroyed distant horizon. Metal fragments pinged off their hull. Each impact made Rin flinch, but the dragon stayed quiet and still, understanding that any movement might throw off Owen's piloting. "Maintenance pod, cease your movements immediately," Haltros commanded over the comms. "You are endangering yourself and our recovery operation." Owen didn't answer. He guided them behind a large section of hull plating and killed the thrusters. The pod went dark and silent. Without power, they'd be harder to detect among all the debris. But without power, they also had about 30 minutes of air left. Rin's breathing was getting worse. The dragon's good lung worked overtime, but the injured wing had affected more than just flight capability. Internal damage, Owen guessed. Watching Rin struggle made Owen's chest tight with more than just oxygen deprivation. Through the viewport, Owen saw the Silver Talon moving through the debris field. It was a proper ship, sleek and efficient, with scanning equipment that could probably find a coin in an asteroid field. They were sweeping methodically, checking every large piece of wreckage. "We can't hide forever," Owen whispered. Rin made a soft sound. Agreement. Then the dragon touched its chest, where something that might be a heartbeat, rapidly beneath scales. It looked at Owen with those knowing eyes and made a decision gesture. "Better to die here than go back." "I'm not letting you die," Owen said. The dragon made a sound that was almost a laugh. Owen heard the question in it. "How do you plan to stop death?" Owen didn't have an answer. He looked at their options. No weapons. No communications that wouldn't give away their position. Minimal fuel. Even less air. And a dragon that was getting sicker by the minute. That's when Owen noticed something about Rin. Despite the cold, despite the thin air, despite everything, the dragon's body was warm. Hot, actually. Owen had attributed it to dragon biology before, but now he really looked. Heat radiated from Rin's chest in waves. "You're burning up," Owen said. "Fever?" Rin made a negative sound. Then it touched its own throat and chest. It opened its mouth and mimed breathing out, trying to show Owen something. Owen remembered fragments of dragon lore from human mythology. Dragons and fire. He'd always assumed it was just fantasy, but Rin was clearly trying to tell him something important about heat and breathing. "Fire?" Owen asked. "Can you breathe fire?" Rin made a frustrated sound. It gestured at its chest again, more urgently. Something was in there, something that wanted to come out but couldn't. Owen pulled up what little xenobiology he'd learned from watching Dr. Scylla work. Dragons had specialized organs. Flame glands, the scientist had called them. They developed as dragons matured. But what if Rin's gland had developed wrong? What if it was blocked or infected just like the wing? "Your flame gland," Owen said. "It's not working properly, is it?" That's part of what made them think you were defective. Rin's whole body language screamed yes, finally, you understand. Is it causing the fever? The breathing problems? Another yes, Owen's mind raced. He wasn't a doctor. He definitely wasn't a dragon doctor. But he understood mechanical systems, and bodies were just organic machines. If the flame gland was blocked, building up pressure and heat, then it needed to either be released or removed. "I can't perform surgery on you," Owen said. "I'd kill you." "But what if we triggered it? Forced it to activate?" Rin made a sound of pure terror. Its eyes went wide. "I know," Owen said. "I know it'll hurt. But you're dying anyway. The infection in your wing is spreading. The blocked gland is cooking you from the inside. And we've got about 20 minutes of air left before we both suffocate." The dragon looked at him for a long moment. Then it nodded. Owen had no idea what he was doing. He pulled up his tablet and searched through the limited medical database. Nothing about dragon flame glands. Nothing useful. He was going to have to improvise. "The gland needs a trigger," Owen said, thinking out loud. "In mythology, dragons breathe fire when they're threatened or angry. Adrenaline response, probably. I need to stimulate that." He looked at the emergency medical kit. There were stimulants in there. Designed for humans in shock. They'd either kill Rin or save him, and Owen had no way to know which. Last chance to say no, Owen told Rin. The dragon opened its mouth. Ready. Owen injected the stimulant directly into Rin's chest. The dragon convulsed. Its eyes rolled back. For a horrible moment, Owen thought he'd just murdered his only friend in the universe. Then Rin's chest began to glow. Heat built in the confined space. Owen scrambled backward as far as he could, which was barely a foot. Rin's scales turned from red to white hot. The dragon's mouth opened wider, and something ancient and terrible woke up in its throat. Flame poured out. Not a little flicker, not a candle flame. A torrent of fire that filled the pod with light and heat and the smell of burning metal. Owen threw his arms over his face. The viewport cracked. The walls began to melt, then it stopped. Rin collapsed, breathing hard but breathing clear. The blocked gland had purged itself. The infection had burned away in the dragon's own fire. Owen could see it in the way Rin moved. Easier, stronger, still injured, but no longer dying. The pod's oxygen recycler sparked and died, melted by the heat. Well, Owen said into the silence that followed. That's not good. Rin made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. They'd solved one problem and created another. No oxygen recycler meant they had minutes left, not hours. The comms crackled. Maintenance pod, we detected a heat signature at your location. Are you having a systems failure? Owen looked at Rin. The dragon looked back. They were out of options. Out of air, out of time. Then another voice came through the comms, different from Haltros. Human. Silver Talon, this is Captain Ruth Okafor of the independent trader Wandering Star. That maintenance pod is broadcasting an independent distress code. Under salvage law, I have first claim. Owen's heart jumped. He grabbed the comms. Wandering Star, this is Owen Blake. I'm in that pod with a sentient being who's been illegally trafficked, requesting immediate assistance. Silence. Then Haltros spoke, his voice sharp. Captain Okafor, that pod contains company property. You have no claim. The dragon is cargo, Haltros insisted. Registered and paid for. The dragon is sentient, Owen shouted into the comms. And I have proof. Another pause. Owen could imagine the two captains staring at each other across the void. Corporate authority versus independent rights. The oldest conflict in space. Finally, Captain Okafor spoke. Silver Talon, I'm invoking human protective law. Any sentient being requesting asylum has the right to sanctuary on a human vessel. Back off or face consequences. This isn't over, Haltros said. But the Silver Talon's engines fired. It moved away slowly, reluctantly. The Wandering Star approached, its bay doors opening like welcoming arms. Owen looked at Rin. The dragon looked back. They'd survived. Against every odd. Despite everything. Ready to live? Owen asked. Rin spread its wings, both of them damaged and whole together. Ready. The Wandering Star's medical bay smelled clean in a way that made Owen's eyes water. He'd spent so long in the recycled air of the maintenance pod that real atmosphere felt strange and too rich. Rin lay on a modified examination table while a human doctor named Irving moved around with careful efficiency. Remarkable, Irving said for the 10th time. He was young for a ship's doctor, with gray streaking his black hair too early. The wing damage is extensive, but the bone structure is healing properly. And this flame gland purge you described saved his life. Crude but effective. Owen sat in the corner, wrapped in a thermal blanket and holding a cup of something hot that might have been soup. He'd been poked, scanned, and declared miraculously healthy for someone who'd nearly frozen and suffocated in space. His hands had stopped shaking an hour ago. His mind hadn't caught up yet. Captain Ruth Okafor stood by the door with her arms crossed. She was tall and solid, with skin dark as space and eyes that missed nothing. You're telling me that corporations have been trafficking sentient beings and calling them animals? Yes, Owen said. For how long? I don't know. Years probably. Maybe decades. Ruth made a sound of disgust. And the Galactic Council allows this? The dragon homeworld is classified as a primitive preserve, Irving said, not looking up from his examination of Rin. No contact allowed. No interference. The species is supposedly presentient, not intelligent enough for protection under law. Rin made a sound that was clearly bitter laughter. The dragon had been quiet since they'd boarded the Wandering Star, overwhelmed by the space and the people and the sudden safety. But that sound conveyed everything. The cruelty of being aware while everyone pretended you weren't. Irving had set up a translation device. Basic technology, common enough. But apparently nobody had bothered to use it with dragons before. Rin's claw touched the panel carefully. The device's synthetic voice spoke. They knew. The traders knew we were awake. The words hung in the air like an accusation. They kept you sedated? Ruth asked. Yes, chemicals in our food. Enough to keep us confused. Not thinking clearly. Rin's claw moved across the translation panel with increasing confidence. Only the damaged ones stayed awake. The ones they fed less. The ones not worth the expensive drugs. Owen felt sick. That's why only defective dragons showed signs of intelligence. Not because they were different. Because they were the only ones alert enough to show it. Convenient, Ruth said coldly. Blame the victim's disability for the crime against them. Irving finished his examination and stepped back. The wing will never be perfect. Too much damage, left untreated for too long. But with proper physical therapy, Rin should be able to glide. Maybe short flights. And the flame gland is functioning now. Properly triggered, it'll develop normally. Rin's good wing spread slightly. Hope flickered across the dragon's face. Owen set down his soup. What happens now? Haltros said this wasn't over. The company will come after Rin. They'll claim ownership rights. Let them try, Ruth said. I've already filed the proper paperwork with the Galactic Council. Asylum claim for a sentient being. It'll tie them up in legal proceedings for months. And after months? Ruth was quiet for a moment. Honestly? I don't know. The law isn't clear. There's precedent for humans protecting other species, but dragons are supposedly primitive. The council might rule against us. We need proof, Irving said. Real proof that dragons are sentient. Not just one dragon using a translator, but evidence of civilization, culture, technology. The homeworld, Owen said. We need to go there. Everyone looked at him. Think about it, Owen continued. If dragons have been sentient all along, there must be evidence on their planet. Buildings, art, something. The traders wouldn't have documented it because that would expose their trafficking operation. But it has to be there, Ruth shook her head. The homeworld is off limits. Protected space, we'd need council authorization to even approach it. Since when do independent traders care about council authorization? Owen asked. A smile tugged at Ruth's mouth. Fair point. But it's risky. If we're caught, we lose our trading license. Maybe our ship. If we don't do it, Rin goes back to being cargo, Owen said. And every other dragon suffers the same fate. Forever. Rin touched the translation panel. My mother is still alive. Still trapped. She was in the breeding program. They took my egg from her before I hatched. There are others like her. Hundreds, maybe thousands. All awake. All suffering. The medical bay fell silent. Irving looked at his instruments. Ruth studied the floor. Owen felt the weight of that truth settle on his shoulders like a physical burden. Finally, Ruth spoke. Irving, can Rin travel? In a few days, yes. The healing is progressing faster than I expected. Then plot a course for the dragon homeworld, Ruth said. Quietly. We're going to get evidence, and we're going to burn this trafficking operation to the ground. Over the next 3 days, Owen learned more about dragons than any human had known before. Rin worked with the translation device for hours, building vocabulary, finding ways to express concepts that didn't translate easily. The dragon told stories of a homeworld where mountains touched the sky and valleys ran with volcanic rivers. Where dragons built cities from stone and fire, creating art that lasted millennia. We were spaceflight, Rin explained, the translator turning clicks and growls into human words. Not yet. Another few generations, maybe. We were studying the stars, building better tools. Then the traders came. How did they subdue you? Irving asked. He'd become fascinated by dragon biology and spent most of his free time studying Rin. Carefully, slowly. They took eggs first, raised us away from our parents, kept us drugged from hatching. By the time we were grown, we didn't remember freedom, didn't know we should fight. But you remembered, Owen said. Rin's damaged wing twitched. Pain woke me. When they broke my wing and decided I was worthless, they stopped the drugs. Stopped caring. I remembered everything in pieces. My mother's voice, the sky, the feeling of flying before I could fly. Owen watched Rin practice with the wing. The dragon worked hard, following Irving's therapy instructions with fierce determination. The wing would never be perfect, but Rin didn't seem to care. Every small improvement was a victory. On the 4th day, Ruth called them to the bridge. We're approaching the dragon homeworld. No council ships in the area, but we need to be careful. We have maybe 6 hours before someone notices we're here. Through the view screen, Owen saw a planet of reds and golds, mountains covered in clouds. oceans that reflected sunlight like molten metal. It was beautiful and wild and utterly unlike Earth. Rin stood at the viewport, transfixed. The dragon's claws pressed against the glass. "Home," the translator said, though Rin's voice was so soft it barely registered. "Let's go find your proof," Ruth said. "And then let's find your mother." The wandering star descended through atmosphere, heading for coordinates that Rin provided from memory. Owen strapped in and watched the planet grow larger. Somewhere down there was the truth, the evidence that would free Rin's people or condemn them all to continued slavery. Either way, Owen thought, there was no going back. They'd crossed too many lines already. Might as well cross them all. Rin's home city was carved into the side of a mountain that breathed smoke and heat. The wandering star landed in a valley below, and even from a distance Owen could see the architecture. Towers spiraling upward with perfect geometry, bridges spanning impossible distances, art etched into stone that had weathered 1,000 years and would last 1,000 more. They called this civilization primitive, Irving said quietly. The city wasn't empty. Dragons moved through the streets and skies, their scales reflecting sunlight in patterns of red and gold and deep bronze. Hundreds of them. Thousands, maybe. A civilization that had been here all along while the galaxy pretended they didn't exist. Rin stood at the ship's door, trembling. Owen put a hand on the dragon's shoulder. "Ready?" "No," Rin said through the translator. "But we go anyway." They walked into the city together. Dragons stopped to stare. Some recognized Rin despite the years and the damaged wing. They made sounds that the translator struggled with: joy, grief, welcome, questions. An older dragon approached, larger than Rin, with scales that had faded to pale gold. It looked at Rin for a long moment, then made a sound that needed no translation. "Mother," Rin said. The two dragons touched foreheads. Owen stepped back to give them privacy, but he watched. Rin's mother examined the damaged wing with gentle claws. Rin explained through gesture and sound. The mother's expression shifted from joy to fury to determination. Ruth was recording everything. The city, the dragons, the evidence of civilization. Her camera captured art and architecture and technology that shouldn't exist in a supposedly primitive species. "This is going to cause problems," she said. "Good," Owen replied. They spent 4 hours in the city. Rin's mother gathered other dragons. They told their stories through translators that Irving distributed. Stories of eggs stolen, children lost, family members who vanished and never returned. A generation of dragons grew up knowing that the sky could swallow their young, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. "Why didn't you fight?" Ruth asked through a translator. Rin's mother answered. "We tried. Ships came with weapons we couldn't match. They threatened to destroy our cities if we resisted. Said they were protecting us by limiting our contact with other species. We had a choice between watching our children disappear sometimes or watching everyone die. What would you choose?" Ruth had no answer. Owen explored the city with Rin. The dragon showed him workshops where others created tools and art. Libraries carved into stone where knowledge was preserved. Schools where young dragons learned mathematics and philosophy and the history of their people. "You would have had spaceflight in 2 generations, Owen said. "Maybe less, now maybe never," Rin replied. "How do we trust the galaxy after this?" Owen didn't have an answer for that either. They returned to the wandering star with evidence that would shake the foundations of galactic law. Ruth uploaded everything to secure servers. Then she looked at Owen and Rin. "We have 2 choices," she said. "We can take this to the Galactic Council and let them handle it through proper channels. Or we can release it ourselves, everywhere, all at once." "The Council will bury it," Irving said. "They've buried it for decades already. They'll bury it again." "If we release it ourselves, we become criminals," Ruth said, "violating protected space. Interfering with Council policy. We lose everything." Owen thought about the maintenance pod, about dying in the dark, about choosing to save one dragon when everyone else said to leave it behind. "Release it," he said. Ruth smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." She sent the files everywhere. Every news network, every independent station, every human colony and settlement. The story spread like fire through dry grass. Within hours, it was everywhere. Within a day, it was the only story anyone talked about. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions. Corporate interests denied everything. But the evidence was too solid, too clear. Dragons building cities, creating art, teaching their children, being sentient while the galaxy called them animals and sold them as pets. Human colonies reacted first. Outrage flooded the networks. Human ships began organizing rescue missions to trading stations and breeding facilities. If the Council wouldn't act, humans would. Other species began to take notice. Some supported the humans. Others called them interfering and emotional. But nobody could ignore it anymore. The Council was forced to act. They sent delegations to the Dragon homeworld. Real delegations this time. Not observers content to watch from orbit. They met with Rin's mother and the other dragon leaders. They negotiated. They apologized. They promised change. Captain Haltros and dozens of other traders were arrested. The trafficking networks were dismantled piece by piece. It wasn't fast. It wasn't easy. But it happened. Rin's mother was freed from a breeding facility 3 months later. Owen was there when Rin saw her again. Really saw her, both of them free and awakened together. The mother dragon looked at Owen for a long time. Then she bowed her head in a gesture of respect. "You saved my child," she said through a translator. "You gave our people a voice. We owe you a debt we can never repay." "You don't owe me anything," Owen said. "I just did what anyone should have done." "But others didn't," she replied. "You did. That matters." The Galactic Council offered Owen a position with the newly formed Dragon Liaison Corps. Good pay, benefits, a chance to be part of history. Owen turned it down. Instead, he returned to the Dragon homeworld with Rin. The Dragons were building their spaceflight program again, but this time on their own terms. They needed engineers who understood both human and dragon ways of thinking. Owen fit that role perfectly. He set up a workshop in Rin's city. Dragons came to learn human engineering techniques. Owen learned dragon methods in return. They built things together, hybrid technology that neither species could have created alone. 6 months after the rescue, Owen stood in the valley and watched Rin fly. The damaged wing would never be perfect. Rin couldn't fly as far or as fast as other dragons, but flight was flight. Freedom was freedom. Other dragons flew with Rin. Some of them had their own scars from captivity. Damaged wings, broken legs that healed crooked, missing claws. They flew together, the imperfect ones, proving that worth wasn't measured by perfection. Rin landed next to Owen, breathing hard but happy. "Thank you," the dragon said, "for staying behind when everyone else left." Owen looked up at the sky full of dragons. "Thank you for teaching me that the most important thing isn't whether you can fly perfectly. It's whether you choose to fly at all." Ruth's ship visited sometimes. She'd lost her trading license like she'd predicted, but gained something more valuable: respect. The independent colonies called her a hero. She'd started a movement that was changing how the galaxy thought about sentience and rights and what it meant to be a person. Irving came too, studying dragon medicine and sharing human techniques. The two species learned from each other, grew together, built trust slowly and carefully. The galaxy was changing. Not quickly, not easily, but changing because one human refused to leave a dragon behind, because one dragon refused to give up hope, because sometimes the most revolutionary act is simple kindness. Owen sat on a mountain that breathed smoke and heat, watching dragons fly through golden sunlight. His sister would have liked this, he thought. She'd always believed that every life mattered. Every person deserved a chance, every broken thing could be made whole again. Maybe not perfect, never perfect, but whole. Rin landed next to him again, this time with others. Young dragons who wanted to hear the story of the human and the sinking ship. Owen told it simply, without heroism or embellishment. Just a choice. Just staying behind when leaving would have been easier. "What made you do it?" one young dragon asked. Owen thought about that. About debt and desperation in the maintenance pod. About dying in the dark and choosing hope anyway. "Someone once told me that the measure of a person isn't what they do when everyone's watching," Owen said. "It's what they do when no one would know the difference. When you're the only one who'd know if you walked away." He looked at Rin, at the damaged wing and the fierce eyes and the friend who'd survived everything the galaxy threw at them. "I would have known," Owen said, "and I wanted to be able to live with myself. That's all." The dragons made sounds that might have been understanding or respect or just acknowledgement. Then they flew again, filling the sky with color and life, and the beating of wings both perfect and imperfect. Owen watched them and thought about his sister and the debts we owe to each other. and the simple truth that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. The galaxy was vast and full of countless species, but it only took one human and one dragon to prove that sentience wasn't about perfection. It was about the choice to stay, the choice to care, the choice to see worth where others saw none. And that choice, Owen had learned, could change everything.